One. Hello, Culture Matters podcast. I'm excited to introduce you to our guest. But before I do that, here's a quote I picked just for this episode. To be a successful business owner and investor, you have to be emotionally neutral to winning and losing. Winning and losing are just part of the game. Robert Kyosaki. Today's guest is our good friend, the one and only Eddy Perez, to talk about the impact that Rich Dad Poor Dad has had on his success. If you listen to the Culture Matters podcast, you know Eddy. It's part of the Culture Matters family. A good friend of mine, a mentor to many, and a liver of the American gift. And apparently Rich Dad Poor Dad has been a huge influence in Eddy's life. So thanks for coming on to talk about this book today. I know we got basically a 24-year anniversary going.
Yeah, it's that time.
So for those that don't know, what is Rich Dad Poor Dad, and what is it to you really too?
It was a book written by Robert Kyosaki that describes it's almost also a journey that he has in life. He has his poor dad, who's his actual biological dad, and then he has his rich dad, who is his best friend's father, who at the time hasn't built the level of success that he has later in life. And ironically, as we film this, it was all done in Hawaii, where I currently am right now. So it's a little symbolic where I'm sitting, but where his rich dad later became extremely well off, wealthy, and he teaches Robert how he did it and why he did it and what he did versus what is traditionally taught out there.
What is traditionally taught when it comes to money, when it comes to success?
Get a good job, make sure your benefits are really good. And then with every promotion, you need a bigger tax write-off, so you need to buy a bigger house. And, stock up as much as you can in your 401k. That's traditionally what's taught. Safety, which is a little interesting perspective because you're not getting out of this life alive. So safety only has a certain purpose to a degree. I'm not sitting here saying put all your money on black and roll the dice in Vegas. Okay. That's where a lot of people try to play that angle. However, it's very tough and I always say if, because it's really up to you. If you want to be an entrepreneur, which is really just meaning you're a self-starter, you believe in yourself first and you wanted to start something. There's nothing wrong with going the employee way, because there's plenty of people that did well in their careers becoming entrepreneurs, getting to a high level, executive level, but they're dependent on something else more than themselves. So that's kind of the gist around that.
Why Rich Dad Poor Dad? Why is it a book that helped you?
So I read it when it first came out when I was in college. I was finishing up my degree in finance, and it just made a whole lot of sense. And it was probably the first book since childhood. Since I became a teen. So pretty much almost a 10-year span. It was the first book that I read cover to cover in a 10-year span, because I read a decent amount in the summers when I was a kid. And then once I became a teenager, teenagers do teenager things. I know that with 2 teenagers of my own now. And it just gave me so many answers. And ironically, I'm not even the only one, because in an interview that we had at our event, TAG, Leo Pareja, somebody I respect a lot, said he read Rich Dad Poor Dad and it changed him. And it's just a book that gives you a great blueprint. It really does. He talks about what a lot of mistakes. Here's another mistake that's done. even if you are an entrepreneur, the book talks about making the company as powerful as possible and not, gutting it out. Now, plenty of us that have owned a business, there's a part of you that is taught also that, oh, no, you need to take it out, put some on the sidelines, which once again, I'm not saying don't take out some, just don't take out to the point that you leave the business always on life support. He talked about, he talks his stories like, oh, your company's, you're very well off. He goes, no, I'm nothing. My company is really worth a lot. And he basically teaches them how leaving it in the organization and growing the organization and growing that asset. If you're just a shareholder, because he talks about it, he goes, no, I'm a shareholder in my organization. The rich dad tells him, you're really building up the organization, which is ultimately, he talks about has essentially his best rate of return anyway than anything the market can generate out there. So why not leave it in?
Can you elaborate on that? What do you mean at the best rate of return? And yeah, what would be your advice to entrepreneurs listening to this as it relates to following and pursuing that philosophy?
A lot of people will talk about stocks, bonds, even real estate. They're big proponents of real estate in there. So they talk about it because they say real estate, retains its value, especially multifamily. They talk about there, any type of real estate, your business is real estate, own with it. And then it goes up in value and it's earning cash flow. They talk a lot about the cash flow game and avoiding the rat race. But they, what do you want me to elaborate again exactly?
Like, what's the reason not to to pull money out of the business? So there's entrepreneurs listening to this that are going against that philosophy that the rich dad's promoting, that you're alluding to.
They may not. They may be very concerned with their business, so they're worried that somebody's going to come get it. However, there is layers of protection if the money is in the corporation versus one's individual self. Now, I know what people say. Well, what happens? I put it in the trust. Okay, I got you. I understand. However, this is how you make it sustainable, because there's going to be periods. It's no different than, we could use the metaphor of your own body, your own energy. There's going to be periods that you need extra energy, in this case, money, to sustain certain things. No matter what, there's going to be ups and downs. And I get, especially the family pressure inside, there's usually the entrepreneur will probably more than want to leave most of it in there, but either you have inside sources or you have sources at home who've been taught, no, you need to tuck it out. What happens if the company goes down? Then we have nothing. So there's a lot of that pressure that's put on. So that's why you see a lot of entrepreneurs, or that's just what they've also always been taught, is to pull it completely out. However, organizations that grew, I just read the book by Sam Walton, Made in America. Most of his wealth, as he talked about, was always the stock inside the organization. I mean, he never had plans of selling or doing anything. So before Rich Dad, Poor Dad book came out, he was essentially living that same story of, yeah, sure, he wound up getting a house and a couple of nice things that he got from the dividends, but most of the money he usually left it in the organization.
Why does he call his dad the poor dad and his best friend's dad the rich dad?
Well, ironically, when this started, his father, his biological father, the poor dad, was doing actually, quote unquote, on paper, financially better than the rich dad. However, the rich dad had a plan with his business. He was buying up real estate and he was slowly converting it over time. More methodical, not as sexy as you can put it. He was doing it very, tried and true.
What about the inevitable rich dad, which was the best friend's dad, led to him to become wealthier? What are the types of things that built his wealth, and what would be your advice to the audience on how to go about starting that process?
He did it through his business, and then his business started buying a lot of real estate.
Hmm.
So I forgot what type of business he had. I believe he had like some sort of, it was like the auto industry. I remember he had like a salvage yard and a few other businesses, but then through the business started buying, we'll just say his company, to use just a name, was XYZ Inc. And then XYZ Inc. started buying real estate through XYZ Inc. and really, really building up those assets and the cash flow of the organization.
Is
How
part
they
of the
did it.
idea of what you were saying earlier that if someone keeps taking out of the business, then they can't get the capital to then go do that. So they never start the
Yeah.
cycle. It's like
Yeah.
like a domino, not a domino, like a
There's
snowball.
never enough food. Yeah. There's just never enough food for your energy, is what I would say. You're always somewhat deprived. Now, you could take that money and invest it in stocks, bonds. However, even in the average, and that's what he talks about, that a stock or bond or mutual fund, anything of that nature, has like, on average through history, average 12%. And that's a very powerful number. You invest in your business and your returns are usually higher because
There's
your
a
return
Chinese
on
proverb
capital.
that a pebble dropped from the top of a mountain becomes a boulder on the way down. Is it that philosophy?
Yeah. 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 Snowball effect, just like you said, same thing. As time goes, you expand at higher speeds and
What
higher
do you think are
velocity and
some
more
of the
strength.
character traits for entrepreneurs listening to this to increase their likelihood of being able to succeed at that endeavor? Because it can't happen overnight, is what I would think.
Well, nothing good happens overnight. Everything's going to take time. So, just understand that, time is very interesting because it's the only true commodity in this world, because it's the only thing that does run out for every individual. And it's rather elusive because regardless of what you're doing, time is like breathing. It's a reflex. It keeps happening. So time is nor your friend nor your enemy. It's not, you'll hear people say that time is not your friend. Time is not your friend if you haven't been doing something for a long time. The good thing about time, though, is that you can cheat time. And what I mean by that is the human spirit is very powerful, very strong. And all of a sudden, if you go full in, and I mean full in, obsessed in, psycho in, whatever you want to call it, you weren't really wasting all that time. You just thought you were, but you may have been picking up little understandings of life and knowledge, and then you just really compact it really, really fast. If you devote that time and you really go all in and put in the hours, it's going to require work.
What do you tell the people that listen to this that feel like they've wasted their life and haven't amounted to much?
First, they need to ask themselves why. Why did they do that? You got to unpack the why, because it's like we were talking about earlier. And in the question you asked me that I didn't finish about his poor dad was an educator and then kept going up the chain of the education system. And then one day, I forgot the incident that happened. Something happened, and he ran politically against his boss, lost horribly, and it was essentially everything that he had worked for kicked out of the education system, basically, essentially blackballed. And then, unfortunately, took the money that he had saved up and invested it, I'm pretty sure, like in a franchise ice cream store that didn't have good real estate, as he said, because it didn't have a good location, because these aren't things that they were aware of. And then eventually he lost it all. So all those stories of safety in the end come back to haunt him, because that's, like I said, there's nothing wrong with being an entrepreneur. However, you leave a lot to outside of your forces, because politics will show up anywhere and everywhere inside your career. And if you're at the behest of somebody else, then you're at the behest of their politics at that moment. And people change, things change, people change over time. So, what I would also say about time is it's really about what you're going to make of it from that moment and that discovery. Once you've had that why answered, then you can do what, if you know why you did it, then you can then go to the next question you can ask yourself is, okay, what do I want to do? And how do I need to go there? Which essentially is action and execution. But you need to find out what are the why is really answering the influence that you've had or influences that have been in your life, yourself, your own influences, your own beliefs, and what you have to unlearn. Because that's the big key is unlearning a lot of times to relearn, because it's one of the things I say about the industry. New people that have gotten in, they're like, oh my God, they're doing so well in the top market. How are they doing it? No bad habits. Your habits, your behaviors drive you. Sometimes to unlearn, the problem is not that it was a bad philosophy. It's just bad habits. They just don't. Sometimes when you give certain people advice like, oh, get a safe job, get this, get the write-off, that may not be in that person's DNA. They may be a self-starter. They may want to build something. They may want to have impact. So it's tough to give advice without asking people who they are, because it's not a one size fits all. If I sat here and said, for every solution, you need to be a self-starter, you need to start your own business from scratch, that's lunacy. It'd be lunacy too if I said, get a degree, go get a good job, get benefits. Ironically, that book did open up a lot of eyes to me, because some of the things that he describes that people behave upon, I was floored when I saw it out in the real world. And I'm still floored to this day, because he says a lot of things that are what I would consider controversial for today. Like, he talks about benefits, and he talks about how that basically traps people at places and they don't even realize they're trapped. And they could even get their own health insurance, because that's the big one. When they say benefits, they're really talking about health insurance. And I understand that it's not inexpensive, especially these days compared to what it was. However, you'll hear it all the time. Oh, I don't even like that job. I hate that job, but they pay for my benefits. Oh, so they found a way to borderline enslave you. And that's what he basically talks about in there. It's taught in school, but think about who it's also. Here's the ironic part that people aren't realizing. Who the heck is teaching you? Government employees, your professors, your teachers, your educators. These aren't people that have gone out there and done it. Now, business school where I went was interesting, because every business teacher was also a consultant and came from the real world. So they were some of the very few in my major that actually were out there and did it. But even in business school, some of the people that had done it hadn't done it in a long time and had become professors. You got to understand, they're going to tell you the same thing: get a good job, get benefits, don't do this, don't do that. The institutions have a lot of influence on people, and what people don't understand is, I'm not saying that because my mom's a teacher. Let me give that disclaimer. So it's not that I'm against the education system. However, my mom couldn't give me advice on being an entrepreneur like my father, because my father was the entrepreneur. Now, had I not wanted to be one or be a self-starter or, go create my own journey, my mom probably would have been a great advice to get a good job, get benefits, because my mom did provide the health insurance for the family through her work. Now, do I think my parents would have figured it out if my mom had her own business? Yeah, I do. However, that's one of the things they talk about is the traps of benefits. And I hear it every day. Oh, this person doesn't like their job, but it pays benefits. Or, oh, they love this job, but the benefits aren't good enough. That's an indoctrination. It's getting paid. The benefits get paid from somewhere. Like that's a form of compensation. And people, I'm not sure if they don't understand it. They don't realize it. I think the big thing is they just have come to expect it. So I don't even know if it should be called benefits at a company. It should just be called entitlement programs, because that's essentially what it's become, is more of an entitlement program.
What would be your What would you say to someone that's afraid to take the leap? They want to pursue their dream, but they're unsure because of that, short-term help.
That's a tough one for me, because I would say just do it. I mean, you can't live in fear. I would say you can't live in, if this is truly you want something to do. If you're doing it just for the money, I wouldn't tell you to do it. That I tell you right there. I'm not saying that you can't have those aspirations. I'm not saying that you can't build wealth because you want to have impact, you want to take care of family, or you want to then build something great, build a foundation, give a lot to charitable organizations, or create, like I said, your own foundation that provides some something for the less fortunate in any category. So I'm not saying that, but what I am saying is, if that's truly your passion, it's something you want to build, I'd say go all in, because let's just say you do fail. Let's go to that extreme, since folks like extremes. It's better to have known than, as Les Brown says, to be on your deathbed and the ghosts of your ideas come at your deathbed and said that we came to you to give us life, and now we're dying with you. I think that's a real, I would say the burden at death is so high of the things you didn't do, outside of maybe mistakes you made and you have some regrets, but you forgave yourself and you worked through them. But the burden of not taking action, I think, is very paralyzing. I think you won't have meaning in life if that's truly something that you want. You wouldn't have fulfilled your purpose, and you could become a nihilist from it, and you could be empty for the rest of your life. So why not find out? Even if you strike out, at least you went for it. At least it's better to be the person, it's better to be the man in the arena, as it talks about, that is maybe getting dejected from the people outside. However, at least they understand what it's like to be in the arena. I would challenge that person. If that's what they want to pursue, find a way to do it. Maybe, especially nowadays, maybe you hear people do it all the time. It starts off as their side hustle till it becomes their main hustle. You hear musicians that do that. You hear athletes that do that. You hear anybody. You hear people that pay through their college to get through law school, get through med school, working, and that's essentially their side hustle to pay for what is eventually going to be their main hustle. And that's what I would say there, that if they're afraid, I get it. I mean, I'm not saying ignore it. I'm not saying don't understand your fears. However, not embracing them, that burden is going to be brutal. You're going to have a lot of regret in your life. A lot. It's going to be very painful for you. I'd say that that's almost scarier, to me at least, than not to go for it.